Well, it's Sunday morning, everyone's asleep. I thought I'd sit out on the patio, enjoy a cup of tea, bit of breakfast, and do some podcasting. Hello, I'm Colin Green, and you are listening to Spike Pit. Now, if you're listening to this episode, chances are you're not listening through Apple Podcasts, because they've given me the big E, the elbow, the Spanish Archer. The problem brought to my attention kindly by Joe Richter. So that's a little bit out of order. I've called up Anchor's support people and they tell me, reliably inform me that everything's fine and I should in fact get in touch with Apple Podcasts. Well, that'll be all plain sailing and I won't have to try and figure out what my Apple ID is and what all my passwords and blah blah blah. CBA, I'll have to sort that out though, because I think probably about half of the people looking at the analytics are listening through Apple, so that would explain why it's gone a bit quiet. Now, talking of other podcasters and things going quiet, the phone line has not been quiet. I've got a bunch of call-ins, and the first one, talking about Spelljammer, is from BJ, the arcane alienist himself. And if someone's going to know about Spelljammer, I reckon that's going to be an alienist, especially an arcane one, don't you think?
And finally, Spelljammer, man, I would love to play Spelljammer with you, Colin, and introduce you to it. Spelljammer is, I think that the original idea behind Spelljammer was for it to let D&D emulate the sort of fantasy you would expect from Jules Verne. 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, First Man on the Moon. Did Verne write that? Or was that? Anyway, but you get what I'm talking about. If you look at the old artwork from the original Spelljammer, there was a lot of, polished wood and brass fixings, and it had a very, that sort of, not even pulp fantasy, the pre-pulp fantasy, the classic science fiction work, and it almost has, today that a lot of that kind of imagery would be used in steampunk, but it wasn't used as steampunk. It was still D&D. It was all based on arcane magic. And they created a version of space for Dungeons and Dragons that would much more some more older ideas about the construction of the universe with crystal spheres floating in the phlogiston, and much more of a Ptolemaic view of cosmology. And then you add in these sort of weirdly fantastical, ships that are probably much more look, at least, and have the feel of much more of a 19th century type of fantasy or science fiction. And of course, you're using the D&D rule set and D&D races and monsters and creatures to run it. So that's what I like about it. At this point, it's almost like a retrofuturism vibe, maybe, with a sort of a non scientific view of space and the cosmos and how you would explore it, or an alternative, how you'd use it using D&D style magic. As far as I can tell from looking at the preview material, and they've got Legends of the Multiverse, which is a live play that they've been doing on YouTube to kind of gear up for it. The major change I've seen they've made is that they've sort of planted it in the classic D&D sort of view of the cosmos. So instead of there being this phlogiston, which doesn't appear that you can sail in, when you get out of a planetary or a solar system, which used to be a crystal sphere, now it's just those systems, those worlds of D&D kind of exist to have space around them called wild space. That's just empty space. But once you cross it, you don't have to penetrate a crystal sphere and get into this phlogiston substance. If you go out far enough in space, eventually you hit the astral plane, the astral sea, and then you're sailing on the astral sea.
Well, thank you for the calls there, BJ, and you said the magic words, Jules Verne. I love the Jules Verne stuff. I don't know, I got really super fond memories of 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, the whole Captain Nemo thing. Admittedly, initially, it was the film that caught my eye as a youngster. I must have been pretty young when I first saw that, and then I think I picked up Journey to the Centre of the Earth and 20,000 Leagues, both books I picked up in a second-hand bookshop or maybe a charity shop. I believe I was on holiday trawling through these bookshops, and I distinctly remember taking them and reading them whilst I was driving around. I'd just met my wife when I was really young, and we were in mid-Wales, headed towards Pembrokeshire. We'd stopped over near just north of was it near Brecon, somewhere around there, or not far from Merthyr Tydfil, and we'd stayed in a little cottage there, and I distinctly remember reading 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. So looks like I'm going to be looking into Spelljammer. Like I say, not in a rush to pick up that book, but maybe I will investigate one of the older versions put out for whatever it was. Was it second? Did you say second edition, or was? I think it was second edition. Either way, it's not important. But talking of nostalgia and settings, I've got a call in now from Carl Rodriguez, the gemologist himself, and a subject very close to my heart. He's picking up on this discussion around high rises, and yeah, regular listeners will have heard me talk about this topic recently, and in connection to Carl's call, not so recently. But let's hear what he's got to say, and I'll jump back in after.
Hey, Colin, this is Carl calling in. When I think of high rises, I think of Warhammer 40k and the hives that exist in these mega cities on these planets. And what I loved in the 40k role-playing game, mainly art, is how they showed them, the cross-sectional view and how massive they were, how they went underground, and the different layers. I guess it's also reminiscent and harkens to Sharn, the City of Towers in Eberron, which I love to play, and all the stratification based on where you live. The higher, the better. There's even houses in the clouds, as it were, compared to the scum underneath and the underbelly. So, yeah, pretty interesting places, these sort of towered cities to roleplay in.
Oh, absolutely. And houses in the clouds mentioned by Carl. I forgot, of course, you've got Bespin. We played recently 5e version of Star Wars, and we played in Cloud City. That has got all the layers going on in there. Once again, you've got the elite up at the top, and then it all flows downhill from there. Exactly the same as Carl rightly mentions, the Hiveworlds. I love the Necromunda skirmish game. Played it so much, I collected all the minis back in the day. I've talked about it, combining it with an urchin theme. And there's, Eberron. I'm not really very familiar with Sharn. That's another one. Perhaps people could tell me about that, or we could have a discussion here for noobs all about Sharn. The stratification idea. You've got the Underhive is a really interesting part of the Hive worlds where Necromunda takes place, but also they make forays into the realms of the outcasts, where down in the sump at the bottom you've got all your mutated monsters. I've read a little bit of the fiction, and I kind of quite enjoy that. It's not the best, but for source material, for coming up with ideas, it's pretty cool. There was one story where this crew of guys were out on the sump hunting raft spiders, and they've got like a vessel, and these raft spiders are important in the fiction, because of a sort of I think it's a neurotoxin that they produce, or is it their eyes are valuable for something? Oh, I can't remember now, but I thought it's perfect for an RPG. Bit of dogs barking in the background for you there, Jason, if you're listening. In fact, I was recently making notes from Necromunda, and I'd realised that all along they use D6 exclusively in the game. They have actually got the D66 chart that I thought I discovered in Maze Rats, and then looking back, I realise now that all Maze Rats did was represented tables that I'd been playing with virtually all my gaming life, and not seen them or not realised what they were, which is kind of weird. Oh, I almost forgot. My brother was fortunate enough to win Iron Kingdoms, the Privateer Press product for 5th edition, and that has got a distinctly guns and mechs vibe, kind of a Norse feel. It seems like quite an interesting setting. So at some point, watch this space, we might be diving into that. Thanks for your call, Mr. Rodriguez.
Hey Colin, it's Anthony calling from Asia, but really calling from the car. It seems like the only place I exist now is in the car. Calling in with thoughts about the high-rise aspect to Cyberpunk and whatnot, and I think it's really interesting and compelling. A few years ago, we were experimenting with Powered by the Apocalypse, to see if it was a good mesh for how we play. And we picked a game called The Veil, which was, I think the second Cyberpunk game for PBTA stuff. And as we developed the setting kind of collaboratively, I noticed that this aspect, this high-rise aspect, that the layers of poverty gradually thin and then become an ever more rarefied layer of wealth stacked on top. And I was kind of curious where exactly this had come from. It was a group that hadn't played together before, really. We hadn't done any Cyberpunk before, really, and we had a blank slate. We could have done anything, but this notion was one that came forward as an underpinning structure, and I found it really interesting. Where did it come from? And I felt that part of it was inspired by where I live. In Korea, there's very, very little land that's available for housing, and so housing is inevitably pushed up into the sky, and of course the type of apartment you live in is a contributing factor to your social status and of course your comfort. But where else had it come from? And it occurred to me later during play that it came from Harry Harrison's novel Make Room, Make Room, which in a sense was transformed into Soylent Green. And while not a precise low to high rise kind of environment, or not so dramatic as maybe that Matt Damon film Elysium makes it, with the very richest living and satellites in orbit and the very poorest left to inherit the Earth, that distinction, that very clear poor live here, rich live here, and it's almost like two separate societies stacked on top of each other. That's made abundantly clear in Make Room, Make Room, and kind of an unflinching bleakness, of course focusing in on the lower strata of society. But anyway, that's what you made me think of.
Now let me see if I can do this. I'm editing in a backing track of construction work. I'll try and find some hammering, and I think I managed to get some hammering on there. Maybe an occasional flyby and some dogs in the background. You wouldn't get this on a Sunday morning. I've had to add all this stuff in. I hope you guys appreciate the cyberpunk vibe that I'm trying to create. And Anthony, the Rune Slinger, Casting Shadows is his podcast. I urge you all to check it out. Half of the mastermind behind RPG A Day Month and many other ventures. I have downloaded that More Room onto the Kindle, a sample, and I will check it out. I love all that stuff, and I'm getting super stoked again for this setting. I don't know what it is. But what I hadn't talked about in response to Karl was, this division, the stark contrast that you mentioned in Elysium, in the Necromunda world, the real wealthy families. I mean, it's grim. It's Games Workshop once again looking to their UK politics of the time. They've got spires that are teams of wealthy, certainly wealthy youths that dress up in power armor, and they've got cybernetics, and they are unleashed onto the population below, and basically go slaying people. They hunt the lower classes for sport, and if they don't make the grade, there's a sort of like this pretty grim idea of natural selection that the noble houses, that's what they actually call them, it's come to me, the noble houses are weeding out their own. So it's it's pretty grim if you think about it, but rich pickings for RPGs, of course. We can't shy away from this stuff, I don't believe. I'm getting pretty excited about this. So awesome to hear from you, Anthony. And I do believe way back when you called in before, it was nearly a year ago now. I think I screwed up your name, and I don't think I ever remember apologising. So maybe it's a year late, but I hope you will accept my apologies. I think I got you confused with the other half of your outfit, whose name totally escapes me. So I guess I'll be offering that gentleman an apology at some point. And to run this setting, I'm thinking ICRPG would be great. I've been rereading it. You've also got Altered State, which I played in a game with Mr. Connolly. A really good game. I don't remember why we stopped playing now. A memorable part of that was Barney nearly blowing us all up with a grenade. He basically almost dropped in his trouser pocket, effectively. That was a blast. We had some good fun with that. We basically the last part, I remember we left off. We just got to the jungle and we was gonna meet up with these kind of ape folk in a bit of a Planet of the Apes kind of scenario. That would have been cool. Maybe at some point there could be a resurrection of that game. But I don't suppose anybody's got time to do that. A bit of a pipe dream. And talking of pipe dreams, with a call in from Spencer, aka Free For All of Keep Off the Borderlands. We've got an up vote for ICRPG, and I'm gonna be talking more about this system in future episodes, and I'm gonna leave this call in as a bit of a teaser for my next episode, which I'm gonna try and put out in a fairly rapid order, because I've got call-ins that are building up. Some of my good old buddies, I don't want to keep them busy. I don't want to keep them waiting. I want to get back to them with a response, and I've got the makings of another episode. So let's hear what Spencer's got to say, button this one up, and look forward to another episode.
Hey Colin, Spencer here. Hope you don't mind me leaving you a message like this because, my Anchor app is absolutely useless because it no longer has a search function, which means having to leave messages via the browser, which on my phone is, it's less than convenient. In fact, it's a right real pain in the arse, if you don't mind me saying so. It was great hearing you were able to visit that school. It sounds amazing. Awesome for the kids that are able to attend. Just a shame there aren't more places like that across the country. And cool to hear that you're starting up a gaming club. I really liked your suggestion of ICRPG. Certainly when you consider things like buy-in, I think there's a basic version of the rules available for free, but I think one benefit of ICRPG is that, well, if you've got that latest edition, you've got everything you need there in one book. And not only that, I think the presentation of it really encourages you to make up your own content. I certainly think that that's going to spark kids' imaginations. And I know hankering isn't exactly what you'd call family friendly, but I think kids would love the guy were they to stumble across his YouTube channel. Not advocating anything there. Anyway, I certainly like the idea of you just putting the stuff out there and letting the kids discover it for themselves and then coming up to you and asking questions about it. I think that's a great way to go. Hope you well, mate. Take care.
Now, for the UK listeners, especially Spencer, I've got a real deep cut. Now, this may have travelled across the pond, but Catweasel's second series of Catweasel, the old fella who's come from the past, he's like a wizard guy, he's come into the future, and in the second series, he lives in a water tank. Now, it's like a water storage tank. It seems very pertinent to today's episode, and I appreciate Spencer's efforts in recreating that kind of cyberpunk feeling of industry and things being metallic and repurposing discarded remnants of an industrial past, and he's actually gone on location and recorded himself within said type of structure. I mean, that is an attention to detail that where else are you going to find that? We call it guerrilla podcasting, but I feel we do ourselves an injustice. A big thanks to the callers then. I couldn't have done it without you guys. Also a thanks to the pit crew, my patrons over on Spike Pit, their continuing, ongoing and generous support. And last but not least, I want to say a big thanks to you, the listener, for taking a bit of time out of your day to listen to old Spike Pit. Take care, and I'll catch you later. And that, as they say, is a wrap. Bang, 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 drill. Yep, keeping it real, folks. Thanks to everybody who's called in. I want to say a big thanks to the pit crew, the generous folks supporting me over on the pit, on the Spike Pit. Oh my goodness. There you go, mate. Throw a few more screws in there.